Okay, it says we're live. Nice. So, it's probably announcing the live stream.
Yes.
So tonight we are shifting gears once again for the last 2 weeks, and I am apologizing again for the last week's lesson on kashrut. I tried to record the audio once I found out that the video was dead. I'm trying to see if I can upload that and connect it and at least have the audio version, but I'm not sure. It's finding time to take care of it. One of the reasons I do the videos the way I do it. Yep. Is this someone telling me there's a problem? Hold on. Hope not. Nope, it's someone saying they can't make it tonight, but that's okay. But one of the reasons I do the videos the way I do it is because I hate editing. I like to just teach and then whoop, drop it and be done, because when you start editing, it just takes forever. So I'll see if I can get it up, and if not, I'm sorry. You can always go back to last year's class on kashrut.
Okay.
The second class on kashrut is the one that got chopped last week. Last year I did the same material, slightly different presentation, of course, but at least most of the information will still be there if you want to go back and review. But so the last 2 weeks, not counting the Q&A session that we did, we've been talking about kashrut, which in many ways is sort of what goes into our mouth. How do we eat in a way that is keeping with Torah, and it is a way that is spiritually empowering. Today we're going to look at what comes out of our mouth, and that is to say the words that we utter. Now, there are lots of different words in Judaism that we use that are good and wonderful. We've talked about blessings. We've talked a little bit about tefillah, about prayer. But tonight we're going to talk about bad words. We're going to talk, not swearing. The swearing is another issue for maybe another day. But what we're really going to talk about is things like gossip, lying, or those types of things. When we use our words in ways that may not be swears, no four-letter words in this, but they are nevertheless things that are prohibited, but also confusing exactly of what is and isn't allowed in our conversations. So with that in mind, there we go, hesitated for a second, we're going to be talking about 5 different types of damaging speech, because words can hurt. Words can cause a lot of trouble. So we're going to be talking about rechilut, lashon hara, sheker, motzi shem ra, and onat devarim. We'll go through each of those, and I'll translate each of them and give you the information. And then we'll also talk about special cases and exceptions to some of them. Okay, so let's get to rechilut. Rechilut is the idea of sharing news and information which is not needed and is not intended to be harmful or insulting, and which you believe is true. In classic English, we often will call that gossip. Right? Now, it's important that although I'll try to use English terms where I can, the English often has a different feeling to it than the official Hebrew and rabbinic definition of what these words mean. So when we talk about rechilut, when we talk about gossip, that in English covers a wide range of activities. In Jewish law, gossip or rechilut is talking about a very specific type of conversation. It's where you're speaking about something that is true, and you're not trying to be mean or insulting, and you're not trying to hurt anyone with it, but you still shouldn't be having the conversation because it's not your business to share. Now, this is, in one case, the smallest of crimes, because after all, you didn't lie, and after all, you weren't trying to be mean. But on the other hand, this is also the most common thing that we transgress. As you can see from Leviticus 19:16, you shall not go up and down as a gossiper or as a talebearer among your people. The Torah is clear. We don't engage in this action of sharing information that's not ours to share. An example of gossip would be, did you hear the Cohen's got another dog? Right? Nothing insulting about that sentence, right? But is it your business to tell someone else that the Cohens have gotten a dog? No. What's wrong with this, right? Is this really going to cause the world to collapse? That's the first trick that our mind plays to convince us to say something we probably shouldn't, is whenever we say it's not a big deal, it actually is at least a little deal. And as soon as we say it's no big deal, we should recognize we probably shouldn't be doing it. So what happens is that when we share information that isn't ours to share, even when we don't mean harm, even when we're not trying to be insulting, and even when it's true, we are opening up new avenues of potential conflict or problems for the people that we are talking about. The Cohens got a new dog, maybe not so surprising, right? But what about the example that you may be able to click onto better? Did you hear that Mrs. Cohen is pregnant again? Okay, well, maybe Mrs. Cohen doesn't want everyone to know that she's pregnant again. Maybe Mrs. Cohen is very sensitive about her pregnancy. Maybe she has had a number of miscarriages and she is very worried about this new pregnancy and worried about losing it. And she doesn't want everyone to know, because if they know and then she miscarries, they'll know she miscarried again. So perhaps Mrs. Cohen shared that information with you because you're a close friend, or maybe she shared it with another close friend who shared it with you, and now you're sharing it more distantly. And this is going to create a network that she is now trapped in, because the information has been spread without her control and without her consent. So it may seem innocent, it may seem innocuous, and not likely to cause any problems, but there are potentials for where it can. We'll talk about why sometimes we may need to share information, but just to give you a little bit of a heads up, if someone was actually sick, if someone had just lost a loved one, if there is a mitzvah that we need to do to help this person, then we are using this as a call to action, not just as a call for conversation. And that's something you need to check in your own mind. Am I sharing this information so that we can help, so that we can do a mitzvah, or am I sharing this information because it's just juicy? Okay. And if it's the latter one, keep your mouth shut. Yeah. Okay. Second category, lashon hara. Literally, this means a bad tongue or a wicked tongue. Lashon hara is saying something that is meant to be negative, but it does happen to be true. And you are not trying to fix or correct the situation. Right, so just give you, sorry, there's no really good English translation, but we'll often use the term denigration, to denigrate someone, which is to say something bad about them, but you're not lying, right? You're being negative on them, but you're still telling the truth. But you're telling the truth to cause harm, or to cause insult, or to cause them to be upset, or causing someone else to be upset. This is similar to what we just saw in Rechilut, but it is generally felt to be a more severe violation, because you are now sharing the truth, but you're doing it in a mean kind of way. And obviously we can see why this can cause problems. And it's obviously still forbidden for the same reasons as rechilut, for gossip, and even more so because it is deliberately trying to be mean. You will find that many people try to cover themselves and say, hey, I didn't say anything that wasn't true. It's like, that isn't the only issue, right? Truth is an issue, and we're going to get to lies in a minute, but that isn't the only issue. Telling the truth in a way that is meant to hurt is still wrong. We are allowed, and we'll get to it later on with more detail, but we are allowed, if we are trying to fix the problem, to actually say something. So for example, if somebody is an alcoholic, and you want to talk to their family about fixing the problem, because maybe you were with them and you saw them get drunk and you saw them drive home and you knew this was dangerous and you couldn't stop them, and you want to talk to their family, and maybe their family doesn't know that the person's secretly drinking or something. And so you go to the family and you don't want to talk about them, but you need the family to work with you and you to help the family to help the person with their problem. If you're doing it with good motivation, then yes, you can share that information, even though it's going to negatively hurt their reputation or the image they have in their family or the community or elsewise. But as we'll come back to in more detail, you have to be trying to help. You can't just be saying this because it's good and juicy. Mm-hmm. Sheker. Sheker is the Hebrew word that usually gets translated as lying. Right? And by lying, I mean actually telling something that is not true. Right? Not that you made a mistake, right? I thought he went to Japan, but in fact he went to China. But you knew he went to Japan, but you said China. for some other reason, and it wasn't just a mistake, right? You are knowingly and deliberately spreading misinformation. If you're not reasonably confident that the information you're sharing is true, check before you say it. Right? And I should point out that even though Judaism has focused always on the spoken word, this all applies for written words as well. Right? So if you're gossiping through text messages, that's still prohibited, even if you didn't say a word because you were only typing. It's still the same thing. And if you spread lies through an email, it's just as bad as spreading a lie through your words. In some ways, it's even worse because people tend to respect written words more than spoken words, which is a strange, weird, human thing. But we'll talk about that another time. So Exodus 23:7 tells us, keep far away from anything false. Now, if you are obviously joking, there are ways that you can still be funny and sarcastic, like saying penguins eat whales, right? That's perfectly fine, but it has to be clear that when you are saying it, it is not meant to be taken as fact, but is meant to be taken as fiction and as humor. Nothing wrong with Jews writing novels that are made up. I'm not lying, I'm doing entertainment. But you have to be very clear that that's what's going on. But on the other hand, deception. The US is the biggest country in the world. I know some people who believe that, honestly, to be true. And you have to explain to them, no, it's not. Right? The US is not the biggest country in the world. There are others that have more land, and certainly many others that have more population. Motzi Shem Ra. So Motzi Shem Ra literally means to bring out a bad name, or to put a bad name onto someone. This is the type of line where you are deliberately damaging a person's reputation or livelihood. Unlike Lashon Hara or Rechilut, unlike denigration or gossip, this is definitely not true. This is spreading false rumors about another person. And this violates both Exodus 23 about not lying and Leviticus 19 about not spreading stories about someone else. So you get to do both mitzvahs. You're breaking both mitzvahs at the same time because you are spreading tales and you're making it up. And so when you're doing this, your goal is to spread enough lies and rumors about a person that you will tear down their reputation or maybe ruin their job. So I heard that Mr. Levy hits his wife. Assuming that's not true, and therefore you're not trying to help, you are trying to hurt his reputation in the community for whatever reason you may think you have. And if you say, I heard Company Q is going bankrupt, you may be trying to hurt Company Q. And that is simply not allowed. Both it is a lie as well as a form of gossip. So Motzi Shem Ra, this deliberate character assassination is not allowed. And hopefully from all of these so far, if you could imagine what your Facebook feed, your Twitter feed, your Instagram, imagine what that would look like if all of these previous categories had been removed. It'd probably be a lot quieter.
Yeah, but more boring.
It'd be a lot more boring. But imagine the good that would come if the only thing you were hearing were things that were true, things that were meant to help, things that were meant to build up, rather than things that were lies meant to tear down, or half-truths, or just mistaken information that's being spread because people like it, even though they don't know if it's true. Mm-hmm. If you remove all of that, the community gets so much better. And we're going to talk about why we have all of these rules in more detail for the second half of tonight's lesson. But just for a moment, keep that in mind of what would my world look like if we avoided all of these things. All right. One more category before we get to the exceptions. Onat devarim. Literally, this means wronging with words. Now, this is a special kind of category because onat devarim is not necessarily lying, and it isn't necessarily insulting another person or spreading rumors about another person, but it is still speaking in a way that can cause harm or damage to a person without being obvious or even provable. The thing about a lie is usually you can tell when a person is lying. You may not know at the beginning, but you can go and check, and then you can come back and say, hey, you lied to me. With onat devarim, the lie can usually never be caught. and the intent to insult can never be proved. Usually, again, if someone calls you a bad name, I know you're trying to insult me. If someone spreads a rumor about me, I know they're trying to harm me. With onat devarim, we're not. It's based on the idea of Leviticus 25:14. And let me give you the example that the Talmud gives of what this category of speech means. So if he himself is a convert and comes to learn Torah, so imagine this guy comes and he is converted to Judaism, and now he wants to study Torah. So he's moving, as we were talking about before we began, he's moving from beginning knowledge to intermediate or advanced knowledge. Do not say to him, shall a mouth that ate forbidden foods, abominable and creeping things, now come and study Torah, which was uttered by the mouth of God himself? This is meant as a compliment, but you can see in it that you are reminding the person of what their life was like before they became Jewish. Now, of course, in the ancient world, a person who lived in a non-Jewish community was usually in a community that was not exceptionally moral and exceptionally good. And so there was a very sharp change when they moved from an idolatrous world to the Jewish world. Nowadays, the jump is not nearly as big. But back then, what you're basically saying is, wow, look at this. You want to learn Torah? That's amazing. Just think about it. 2 years ago, you were eating horrible, horrible things. And now you want to put words of Torah in your mouth. If I'm the person who converted, how do I take that? Do I know that you're trying to insult me? Do I know that you're trying to tear me down, or you're trying to remind everybody that I was a convert, or put me in my place? Or I can't prove it, because your intention is only in your heart. And it's kind of true. So I can't prove you wrong. So I am left with no way to get justice for what you have done to me. And that is wronging someone with your words. You weren't lying. You weren't clearly insulting. You weren't clearly trying to hurt my reputation. But what you were doing could do all of those things. And therefore, you don't say things like that. A few more examples. If he suffers afflictions of disease, or he has buried his children, do not say to him, as Job's companions told him, is not your fear of God your confidence, and your hope the integrity of your ways? Remember now, who that was innocent ever perished. Right. So the friends of Job's friends are considered the paradigm of bad friends. Because here we have in the story of Job, a man who has lost his wife, he has lost his children, he has lost all of his property, and he's himself sick and injured. And his friends show up and go, oh man, that's terrible. You must have done something terrible. Thanks. Right? Way to rub a little salt in that wound. But are they saying that to be mean? They might be. Or are they saying it because they really believe that God would never let something bad happen unless you were bad? They might actually believe that. So are they being my friend, or are they not? It's not clear from their words, but their words definitely would oppress me, the person listening. And I would have no way to say, I can't object to what they said directly, until the rabbis told us that this is the kind of thing you don't say. Right? This is onat devarim, oppressing someone with words. If donkey drivers sought grain from a person, he should not say, go to so-and-so who sells grain, knowing that the person has never sold any. Right? Giving bad directions when you know you don't really know, that is also oppressing, because how can they prove you didn't know? Right? How can they prove that you were deliberately misleading them? How can they be sure that you weren't trying to be helpful? You are wasting their time, and there is no way for them to be able to say, you wronged me. And so these words fall in that special category that aren't covered by gossip and the other situations. Rabbi Yehuda also said, one may also not pretend to be interested in a purchase when he has no money, since this is known only to the heart, and of everything known only to the heart, it is written, and you shall fear your God. Why is that phrase used for matters that are only known in our heart? Because I don't have to fear the court. right? Normally in life, if I am driving too fast, if I cheat someone in business, if I get into a fight with my neighbor, I have to worry about the police. I have to worry about the courts. I have to worry about lawsuits. But for these things, no one can take me to court for any of these things. And so I better be fearful of God. I better be in awe of God, because that's the only thing that's going to keep me in line. And if I were to go into a shop and I had no money and I waste the time of the shop owner and the shopkeeper and say, oh, show me that and show me that. Oh, let me try this on. And I know there's no way I'm going to buy this. That is forbidden, which, by the way, means that you have to be careful if shopping is your hobby. If shopping is your hobby and you know that when you go into the store, there is 100% certainty you will not buy anything, you are not allowed to go into that store and waste their time. It's just simply forbidden. If there is a 1% chance you might buy, then yes, you are allowed to go in. This is also, in the modern terms, a very interesting problem called showrooming. A lot of people buy online. Like I think I just read recently, Amazon, for example, sells 50% of everything sold online is sold through Amazon. But the problem with Amazon is I can't go in and look at the new camera, at the new TV, at the new iPhone. I can go to Best Buy and they've got them on display. If I go into Best Buy and I pick it up and I look at it, and then I go home and I order it on Amazon, you are violating this principle. If you go to Best Buy knowing that Best Buy might convince me to buy from them, right? Maybe I'll walk in and maybe the salesperson will convince me that it's good to buy it in person and they're going to deliver it and they'll be here today and they'll get it set up. If there's a chance that I might buy it in the store, I can go to the store. But if I know I'm only going to the store to look at something I will definitely buy online, then I am violating this principle when I walk into that store and I use their facility for myself and Amazon, not for them. Make sense? Yeah, so these update in the modern world very, very well. Okay. There are also things that are kind of prohibited, but not exactly prohibited. What we call avak lashon hara, the dust of lashon hara. It's not the actual thing, but it's kind of like a little bit of dust on your hands. Your hands aren't covered in mud, but they've got dust on them. And you got really close to the edge of doing something wrong. So, for example, what is this? If one says you should stay like you are now, or don't ask me about him, I don't want to say what happened. Anyone, so these two categories, they're not exactly lies, they're not exactly insults, but they are hinting at problems, or they are preventing me from helping you, right? If someone says, what do you think of my new haircut? And you know that everyone is going to be laughing about their new haircut. Don't say, oh, it's perfect, right? You're not actually breaking one of the early ones, but you are leading the person with your words to the wrong conclusion, right? If someone is always having trouble and you say, oh, no, stay as you are, you don't need to change. Or maybe they eat food that is unhealthy for them and you say, oh, don't worry about it, or you don't need to exercise. You're not helping them. Right? Your words are actually potentially causing harm. Now, you're not spreading rumors, you're not lying, you're not being insulting. That's why it's called avak, the dust of bad speech. It's not literally bad speech, but it is so close that you should still be very careful. And similarly, the whole, oh, don't ask me about him. I don't want to say what happened, right? Hinting at a problem without even saying it is only a little bit better than actually saying the problem or lying about the problem. So you may think that you got a loophole, but no, don't. And then the last case, right? Anyone who praises his friend in front of those who hate him has spoken avak lashon hara, since this causes them to speak negatively of him. Think about that for a moment. You're with a group of people and you know they don't like John. And you say, oh, yeah, John is great. I love John. And you know they don't like John. What are they going to do? What do you mean John's great? John's the most worthless piece of dirt I've ever... You know, as soon as you say something of a compliment about John, you know they're going to jump and say something bad about him. So you don't say anything bad and you don't say anything good about John. Why are you talking about John to people who don't like John? Right? Just let's leave it alone. So you might think, well, I didn't say anything bad. I only say nice things. But you were tricking them almost into insulting John. Okay, Now, why do we have these prohibitions? Why does God care so much about what we say? I mean, words are just words, right? Well, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that indulge it shall eat the fruit thereof. Someone rolling a cart? Just a moment. I don't think the roofers are here.
I heard a voice from a lady before.
We okay? That's okay, Harriet, leave it. As long as they're not coming in here, we're fine. We got the security guard on duty, so I know we're safe. Just was hoping they weren't going to try and roll the cart into here for the meeting at 7. It's good that people are here early, but
Yeah.
And now we lost Harriet. The AC on a little bit. Don't mean to brag to people who don't live in Florida, but it's gotten a little warm today. Everything's okay?
Michelle Gill was getting stuff out of her car, bringing it into the kitchen.
Ah, right. Drop off. Yes. Getting the kiddush ready. Yes.
Right.
All right. So death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that indulge it shall eat the fruit of thereof. It's sort of you live by the sword, you die by the sword, right? If you are a gossiper, the gossips are going to come back and get you. If you are a liar, your lies will come back to get you. And this is from Proverbs 18. From Psalms 34, who is the man who desires life, who loves days of seeing good? Guard your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceit. If you want to know how to live a good life and how to have a good life, start here, right? Because this is one of the most powerful human things we have. It is one of the main ways we interact with other people. Right? We don't touch other people much. You shouldn't. We don't interact with other people so much through our other activities. The main thing that we do for us versus other people is with our mouth, is with our words. And so if you rein this in, if you use this only for good, it will make a huge difference for the goodness of life. As Rashi says on our verse from Leviticus 19, the one that says, do not go about as a gossiper, Rashi explains, I say that since all those who start quarrels and speak Lashon Hara go into homes to seek what evil they can see or what evil things to tell in the marketplace, they are the same as those who go about spying. Think about the people who are the biggest gossips, the people who love sharing all that information. When they're having a conversation with someone, they are keeping a list of all the things that they can then go tell someone else. That's called being a spy. Right? And spying is a terrible, terrible thing to do. I mean, sure, if you need to save your country, that's another issue. But it's no different than going through someone's mail or going, sneaking into their house when they're not home, looking for things that you can tell other people. If you're stealing their information by conversation, their privacy, to share it with other people, it is a terrible, terrible thing to do. And most of the time, people don't even realize. They think they're having a conversation with you. They don't know that you're secretly taking notes in your mind of, I can't wait to tell so-and-so about what he just told me. And so they are being taken advantage of, and you're using them for your entertainment or for getting more prestige or more power and all of that. And it is just a terrible behavior. Also from Proverbs 16 through 20 in this case, these 6 are hated by the Lord. And the 7th is the abomination of his soul: haughty eyes, a false tongue, and hands spilling innocent blood. Think about that, right? Haughty eyes is like being arrogant, right? Right? And a false tongue, obviously lying, and hands spilling innocent blood. Murder is lumped together with these other innocent mistakes, right? So I was a little arrogant, so I told a little lie, so I murdered someone. You don't normally think of those as going together, but the Judaism is trying to say, just as you damage a community by slaying a person, by taking a life, so do you damage the community by engaging in all of these practices. And also a heart plotting vain thoughts, feet hastening to run to evil, a false witness spouting lies, and the inciter of strife among brothers, right? Someone who says something to another person deliberately to try and make them You know what that guy said about you? He said that you were a coward. And then, you know what he said about you? He said that you were You're deliberately trying to make people angry and fight with each other. You'll notice that of these 7 things that are mentioned here, almost all of them are with the mouth, right? Sure, shedding innocent blood, that's something that we usually do with our hands with a weapon or some other form. But most of these other things are things that we're doing with our mouth. And this is what proverb lists as being among the worst of our behaviors. This is from Chachot Tumat Sarat. This is from Rambam's Mishnah Torah. Think about what happened to Miriam. You may remember that Miriam in the book of Numbers had a conversation about Moses. She talked about Moses with her brother Aaron, and she got in trouble for that. And she was afflicted with the tzaraat, with the skin problem that's discussed in the Torah. Think about what happened to Miriam, who spoke about her younger brother, for whom she had risked her life to save from the Nile, right? We know that she loved her brother. We know that she wanted good for him, but she still talked about him. She may have even thought she was helping. Indeed, many of the classic commentators think she was trying to help her brother and also help his wife. So it was a good thing, right? She didn't even speak negatively about him, other than to compare him to other prophets, saying, why should he separate himself compared to the rest of us? Moses himself didn't mind. Remember, Moses didn't get upset. She was still punished with sara'at, all the more so for other wicked and foolish people who speak all types of haughty and pompous words. Anyone who wishes to improve should stay away from such people. So if Miriam, who meant well and who loved her brother but still shouldn't have spoken, was punished, people who don't mean well and who don't love the person they're talking about, they are even more trouble. And the rest of us, we shouldn't hang out with them, right? We shouldn't be around people, because there's a problem, is that gossip only works if people pay attention, right? If no one listens to gossip, gossipers stop. And we're going to get to that in just a second. But first, in Chachot Deot, again from Rambam, different section, the rabbi said 3 sins are punished in this world, and the sinner loses his place in the world to come, right? Idolatry, incest, and bloodshed. Right? What the rabbis are talking about is an unrepentant person, a person who commits any one of these 3 crimes. They obviously will be punished in this life, and when their life here is done and would normally go on to Olam Haba, spiritual oblivion. Right? Their soul is simply destroyed. Right? They don't get the next life. They are just gone. Right? Poof. Which is horrible. Right? And these are therefore 3 of the most horrible things you could imagine. And Lashon Hara is equivalent to all of them. Now, that is meant a little bit as hyperbole, right? It's not trying to say literally if someone ever once did Lashon Hara, they will not be able to have the world to come. But it's saying you shouldn't think of this as being a light problem, as being a little problem. Lashon Hara is as serious as murder. It's as serious as incest. It's as serious as idolatry. That is how much Judaism hates this practice. And furthermore, the rabbi said that Lashon Hara kills 3 people: the speaker, the receiver, and the one spoken about. And the receiver more than the speaker. Right? Wait a minute. Why should the person who hears the Lashon Hara be worse off than the person who says the Lashon Hara? Right? Because the person who hears has the ability to stop it, not only for themselves and not only to protect the other person, but also to stop the person who is speaking. Right? The rabbis say that if there was no one who would buy stolen property, nobody would ever steal. Right? If I go and I steal jewelry from your house, if I've got no one who'll buy it, because everyone goes, whoa, no, that's stolen, there's no way I'm going to buy that, then why would I bother stealing? Right? The only reason people will steal, the only reason people will gossip is because someone is buying, because someone is consuming it, because someone wants to hear it. Even if they don't want to say it, they are still the marketplace for gossip. And therefore, if someone comes and wants to tell us, it's our obligation to say, no, I can't. This is Lashon Hara, this is Rechilut, I can't listen to this. And that is a hard position to be in. To tell a friend or even a loved one, I'm sorry, no, that's very difficult and very challenging. But I'll tell you that when you make a habit of it, people learn, and they don't talk like that around you anymore. If we all made a habit of it, then no one would talk like that anywhere. So we do have the ability to control that. Again, why do we prohibit? Well, Arichin, the Talmud in 15b says, what is the tikkun? What is the way that you fix lashon hara? There is no tikkun. There is no way to fix it. Because how do you fix gossip? How do you fix rumors? How do you fix slander? Right? As soon as I said, like in that earlier example, Mr. Cohen hits his wife, if I decide next week, I can't believe I said that, that was terrible, I never should have told people that he did that, because of course it's a lie and it's da-da-da-da-da-da. How do I go and take it out of their minds? How do I erase it from history? How can do I have to, take a big page ad in the newspaper saying I lied when I said Mr. Cohen hits his wife? That could make it worse. Once it's out, words have a life of their own.
Yes.
And so therefore trying to really fix it. If I steal something from you, it's pretty easy how to fix it. I give it back. If I steal your reputation, how do I give that back? Right? There's no way to repair that 100%. Okay, but there are exceptions. That is to say, there are times when each of these different categories are okay, but they are very special circumstances. So, rechilut, for gossip, first of all. As the Chofetz Chaim, who wrote literally the book on speech, says, for the real concern of the Torah in forbidding evil talk, even when true, was the evil intent involved in wishing to disgrace our fellow and enjoy his discomfiture, right? I just want to see him squirm, right? So what does that mean? It means that there are special circumstances when you can speak gossip, when we're removing the evil intent and we're removing the disgrace. And you have to meet all of these conditions to know that it's allowed. And yes, that may look tricky, because it is. If the information being shared for purely constructive purposes meets the following conditions, it can be shared. Condition 1, the information must be seen by the speaker or be known to be true, right? Nothing, I'm repeating what someone told me they saw so-and-so did. No, right? I had to see it if I'm going to talk about it, or I have to have video evidence or something that proves that it is absolutely true. 2, the information cannot be exaggerated, right? So if you want to talk about Mr. Cohen's drinking problem, you have to actually say, he was drunk last week, or I saw him get drunk the last 2 Sunday nights. You can't say, he gets drunk all the time, because you don't know that, right? That is an exaggeration. You are stretching your information further than your information can go. 3, the speaker should be sure that the news breaks Jewish law, right? If you're sharing this information in order to fix something, there has to be something that needs fixing. There has to actually be a problem. If it's just, I don't like the way he dresses, but is it violating Jewish law, right? Or I don't like, how he cuts his grass. So does the Torah tell you how to cut your grass? Right? No, you may not like it, and you're entitled to have your own opinion, but that doesn't mean that you get to go tell everyone about the problem, because it's not really a problem unless it's breaking a commandment. 4, the speaker must have pure intentions. This may be the hardest one, to make sure that when you are sharing the information with someone else, you are sharing it for good purpose, that you are not at all, and this will teach him to not cut his grass, or ever since his kid beat my kid in that football tournament, I've always wanted to take him down a notch, and now I'm going to tell everyone, and it's for a good cause. No, if you have that extra part of your mind that's happy that you get to say something bad about the person, you should not be the one talking. Maybe someone else should talk, right? And maybe there is still need, absolutely, if this is a real problem, but you are not the vehicle. You're not the one who should be doing it. Number 5, the speaker should first go to the sinner before speaking about him, right? So if there's a problem, you can't just go and run and talk to everyone else. You have to talk to the person who's actually breaking the commandment first and say, I'm really worried about your drinking. It seems like this is getting out of hand. you have to talk to them before you spread it to the rest of the world. Because if you spread it to the rest of the world without talking to them, you don't know that you might have been able to fix it without the information being spread. And if you can fix it with the information being kept secret and private, that's how you have to start. 6, if the purpose can be achieved in a way other than speaking, that should be tried first. Right? So let's imagine that there's a way to help Mr. Cohen that doesn't involve spreading the information. Maybe it is sending him a free subscription to Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Maybe it is dropping a hint somewhere that he might overhear, but nobody, and even he wouldn't know you were talking to him, right? But just it happens to come up in conversation when he's walking nearby. If you're able to do it in that way, so that there is therefore no embarrassment, no evil intention, no harm, no disgrace, that is preferred. If you can't, if you have to talk to the person directly, then yes, but you should always look for a way to do it that doesn't involve throwing their problem out into the public. And 7, the speaking should not cause more damage to the subject that would have been decreed in a court. Right? So let's imagine that the problem is that you saw him secretly letting his dog go on his neighbor's lawn, right? Make do his waste on the lawn, using it for the bathroom. That's actually a Torah violation, right? Because you are damaging someone else's property. And let's imagine you talk to the person and he says, I don't care about that. I don't like my neighbor. Okay, so now you have to fix what he's doing, and you're going to have to talk to someone else about it. But you have to be sure that when you talk to someone else about it, that you don't do it in such a way that he is now going to be slapped with a $10,000 fine, right? For trespass or for something else, or it's not going to make his neighbor sit out and with a rifle and shoot the dog when he comes onto his property. No, because if you were able to go to a court, the court would just give him a fine for whatever his dog did. They wouldn't make it some enormous big problem. So that you have to be sure that when you get the information out there, that it is limited and not going to be too destructive. Okay. Sheker, lying, right? There are exceptions. I know that there are some philosophies and that there are some other religions that say, never lie, ever, 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 ever. There is no reason ever to lie. Judaism is not one of those. We do say 99.9% of the time, you shouldn't lie. But there are exceptions. So in all the cases, the decision should not be treated lightly. When can we lie? For peace, for privacy, to avoid embarrassment, and to avoid undue trouble to others. Not for myself, but to avoid undue trouble for them. We're going to give examples of each of those. Peace. One may lie in order to reconcile husband and wife, friends, siblings, or others who are fighting. Such lies should only be aimed at restoring peace and not giving advantage to anyone in the fight. So you want to lie and say, I think that, your husband is really upset that you're not there. Maybe you don't have 100% proof that he's really upset, but you know that if his wife hears that, she will soften her mood. And if you tell him that she is softening her mood, he'll also soften his. You're not trying to help one of them win. You're just trying to help bring them back together, right? If you tell a little lie to help that move along, again, not a big lie, not, something that's stupid and outrageous and will cause more trouble when it becomes obvious that it was a lie, but just enough to help move people together, then that can be allowed. Again, has to make sure you don't do more harm than good.
That's like a sweet little lie.
Yes. But again, it's for their help, and it's not to help him over her or her over him. It's to help them together. Yeah. For privacy, right? One may lie to avoid revealing their private life to others, such as when asked if you are pregnant, you may say no, even if you are, to keep people from knowing your personal affairs. Right? You might think, well, they asked me if I'm pregnant. If I say yes, they're going to make such a big deal, and I don't want them to make such a big deal about it because, like I said before, maybe I'm worried of miscarriage or issues or other things. I haven't told my mother yet, and how can I have this person know before I've told my mother? But I don't want to lie. It's okay. Lie.
I just have a question. I used to go to Chabad,
Mm-hmm.
And I worked for this kosher restaurant and everything, and I heard from other people that I'm not supposed to ask when the lady said she's pregnant,
Hmm.
to ask her, what is the sex of the baby?
Right.
Or curious about, because, that people like me that, I've been living, secular life,
Right.
and now I'm just in the Judaism here. So, people doesn't get, take it too personal when they ask, oh, you're pregnant, congratulations, something
Yeah.
like that. And so people, they can take it really disrespectful. Now, is it okay to say a woman who's pregnant,
Mhm.
you see that she's pregnant,
Right.
say congratulations to her?
Congratulations is fine, or the traditional Jewish phrase is b'sha'a tova, which
Uh-huh.
literally means in a good hour or good time, meaning I hope the pregnancy goes well and the baby is delivered at the right moment so that everybody, mother and baby, will be healthy.
Okay.
Right? That's what that all means. And you can say, I hope you have a healthy pregnancy. I hope everything goes well.
Uh-huh.
But the prying, do you know what if it's a boy or a girl? Have you picked out names yet? Well, if they want to share that information with you, great.
Right.
But you don't get to be the police interrogating them.
Uh-huh.
Say, all right, tell me, do you have the nursery done? Do you have this done? I mean, who's the moil going to be?
Because some people are very curious, if you already have other kids,
Yep.
People are curious to say, oh, is a girl or boy coming in,
And curiosity is fine
Uh-huh.
as long as you let them lead the conversation.
Okay.
Let them share what they want to share. And then you respond and you participate. But you don't need to interrogate.
Uh-huh.
So that is very much the case of the right way to handle it.
Okay. Because I have, where I used to work, I see all these ladies having kids.
Mhm.
And, I worked there for 2 years. I saw a few people getting pregnant and having their kids, but all my respect, because they told me, don't even think.
Yep.
Somebody said, don't even think to ask me. It's okay. I will never. But I know she's pregnant. She's having her baby. That's it.
Right.
And never asked. And even when she had her baby, then we found out what kind of sex it was.
Right. Yeah, of course.
But I'm just, because now how should I say this? Technology is so advanced,
Yes.
that now you can find out, what is the sex of the baby. Some people, they don't even
They don't
go
wanna
through that. They don't
Yep.
want to know either.
They want to be surprised.
They want to be surprised, yes.
We wanted to know. So
Uh-huh.
for both of our kids, we found out in advance so that we could prepare properly. And we didn't care who knew. So we shared that information freely. But some people are more private and they don't want to share that information. And that's their choice.
Yes, and I respect
Yeah.
that. Don't get me wrong, I respect that. But the secular life is completely different.
Although
People,
I'll tell you, the weirdest thing I saw in the secular world was
Uh-huh.
when, my wife and when we were having kids and when our friends were in that same age,
Uh-huh.
was people who would come up and touch the pregnant mother's stomach.
Oh.
It's like, what are you doing? Right? The stomach of a pregnant woman is
Yes,
it's not public property. It's,
Yes,
keep
some
your
people-
hands to yourself. Oh yes.
Yes,
I've seen
let
it
me
so
tell
many
you.
times. It's
And
like,
I
oh, you're pregnant. It's like, get away. But
It's true. It's true.
yeah,
It's true.
it's a
But
very
some
weird
people-
behavior, in my opinion. I'm
I
sure in
know.
some cultures it's perfectly normal and
Yes,
fine,
it is.
but not in my house and not in our community.
And it's true. Like me, I never had any kids, but I have seen friends of mine.
Right.
They have come in, other friends.
Right.
Good friends, and they have touched the belly of a good friend of mine.
Yep.
Just like giving like a blessing or something.
I
But
mean,
it's
it
just
can be
love
very.
because it's their friends. But I understand.
Right.
I definitely, like me. If I one day I get pregnant, I will never let anyone touch my
Right.
belly because I think that's my property
It's yours.
and nobody else. It's just
Yours,
right.
yours and your husband's and nobody else.
Uh-huh.
Well, I mean, in
it's
general,
something
when
like
it comes right, when in general when it comes to touching, it's always best to let the other person make the move, right? So, like for example, I do not go out and hug people until I'm sure they want a hug, right? If they put their hands like this, then I'll give them a hug, right? But if they put their hand like this, I'm not going for the hug because
Uh-huh.
they've already shown they want a handshake, not a hug, and they have the right to choose. All right, let's just wrap this up. Also, the other embarrassment to lying, the other exception to lying is to not cause embarrassment to another person. Again, this is not about protecting yourself, unless it's a privacy issue. This is about protecting other people. One may lie to avoid embarrassing another person. If asked where someone is, you may say they are at some event rather than say they are home with an embarrassing illness. Right? Do you really want to say, oh yes, Mr. Smith is home and he has horrible diarrhea? No, you shouldn't reveal that about him. Now, it's true.
Don't go in detail.
Right, and when you say, "Oh, I think he's out for the week," right? I think he maybe was going on vacation, but you know he's not really on vacation, right? That's okay, because that way you're not embarrassing the other person. And you can admit embarrassing details when discussing someone's past, right? Again, it's not like if someone is going to marry them and they need to know about them, but if you introduce them, you don't have to say, "This is Mr. Smith. He spent 5 years in prison." Right? No, you do not need to share this information with everybody that you meet. Another exception to sheker, a very famous discussion from the Talmud, Ketubot 17a. One recites praise of the bride as she is. You're at a wedding. Do you compliment the bride even if she's ugly? Right? Do you still say you're a beautiful bride? Well, Beit Hillel says, one recites a fair and attractive bride. This was like a quote from their day and age of what you say to a bride. You are beautiful. Beit Shammai said to Beit Hillel, in that case, where she was lame and blind, does one say to her, a fair and attractive bride? How can you call her fair and attractive? Look at her, she's hideous, right? But the Torah says, keep far from a false matter, right? Which is what we talked about earlier. So Beit Hillel said to Beit Shammai, according to your statement, with regard to one who bought something poorly made from the market, should another praise it and increase its values in his eyes, or insult it and reduce its value in his eyes? Right? The guy's already bought it. What good does it do to speak the truth of how bad the item is? Right? Oh, yes, you bought one of those cars. Those are the most ugly cars I've ever. No, you say, wow, that is great. You know, I don't see many of those cars around. It's really unique. Right? You might as well say something positive about the purchase because he already owns it. And you might as well say something nice about the bride because they're already married. Right? Well, if the guy asks your opinion before you get married, do you think she's attractive or not? And he's not really sure, and you're not, trying to hurt them for any reason. You can be honest and say, well, she's not the most beautiful person I've ever seen. You can be honest, but once they're getting married, you don't go up on the wedding day and say, you have a great personality, which is exactly what they say, right? You must say that he should praise it in his eyes. From here, the sages say a person's disposition should always be empathetic with mankind. You should feel, compassion for other people and not use your words to hurt them even when they're truthful. Sometimes you do need that little white lie. Undue trouble. One may lie to avoid causing unnecessary trouble to others, such as saying the food was fine to prevent host from making more, right? Are you full? I'm fine, right? I'm full. Because if you say no, they're back in the kitchen, or maybe they can't even afford it and they're going to put something on the table anyway. You should be polite and say, yes, I'm fine. The food was lovely. You don't need to be honest in that case. There is such a thing as being kind instead. Or saying you don't need a ride because the person you are speaking to will miss an important event if they help you. You know that Mr. John, right? If you say that you need a lift to the bus station, he will be there. But if he does, he's going to miss his first hour of work. And if he misses his first hour of work, he's going to get doctor's pay or he might lose his job. But he won't say no to help a friend. So you don't tell him you need a ride, right? Even though if he asks you, do you need a ride? And you do, you don't say yes to him because you will cause him more trouble than really it should be for the help you need, right? Just get an Uber. There are other ways to handle this. Mm-hmm. In summary, right? Ramban in his beautiful way, it is possible that one could be a scoundrel, right? You can be a jerk with the full permission of the Torah, as long as he didn't violate specific commandments. He could be drunken, gluttonous, crass, and speak all sorts of vile things. There are ways to say and break all of these rules without breaking the rules, right? Like I said, with that avak, you can get right up close to breaking them and still be a not nice person, but not actually break the commandments. So after giving the details of those things that are prohibited, the Torah now gives a general command to be holy. From Leviticus 19, speak to all the congregation of the children of Israel and say to them, you shall be holy, for I, the Lord your God, am holy. That is ultimately, at the end of the day, what you have to ask yourself before you say something you're not sure you should be saying. Is it allowed? Good question. But is it holy? Is it right? Even if it's allowed, sometimes you still should just keep your mouth shut. And with that in mind, we will call it a night. Thank you very much.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.